Hello everybody, welcome to Downshift. I'm Ethan. Me and my friend Chad will both be making content like this for the channel, and I hope you all enjoy the videos to come. Anyways, today I'm going to be discussing 5 fun BMWs that you can get on your Ps. On that note, let's talk about the E90. The E90 BMW 3 Series, specifically my favourite model, the 325i. The 325i houses a 2.5 litre naturally aspirated inline-6. With DOHC and VVT of course, the N52 engine produces 160 kilowatts of power and 250 Nm of torque. Being on the lighter side, this thing is a power to weight ratio of 114 kilowatts a tonne, accelerating it to 0 to 100 in just 7.7 seconds. As much as some people would say that's kind of slow, which it is, if you've got the money, you can easily bring up the power and torque numbers in the car. The N52 engine can take quite a bit of abusing, to be frank. Redlining at 7,000 RPM, this car has a very heavy steering, allowing you to really thrash it around the corners of hills. James May in a Top Gear review on this spoke about it, and while many of the luxury reviewers were talking about how weighty and how mechanical it feels, that's what we're looking for. Disregarding their opinions, this car has a great drive. It's very economic, consuming fuel consumption combined of 8.3 litres every 100 kilometres. In extra urban it's 6.2 litres, and fuel consumption just urban is 12 litres. It's affordable, it's got wonderful aftermarket support, like M Sport body kits, other OEM body kits. You've got OEM performance parts, aftermarket performance parts, and aftermarket body kits, like the carbon wings and ridiculous taillights. It's a great car to get your hands on if you're just getting into modifying Beamers. It's the cheapest 3 Series on this list, and it's understandable. It's not the best looker, but it definitely still does hold its value for money. Hell, I'd say it's got better value for money than the E92 and the E46. But that's enough about this car. If you're looking for cheap fun, the E90 BMW 325i is the way to go. Moving on to a more well-known model, let's talk about the E46, renowned as the best M, the last true M car. But we're not talking about that one. We're talking about as close as you can get to that and still be able to afford it. The E46 BMW 330i, CI, M Sport, whichever. One of these. It houses a 3 litre inline-6 that's naturally aspirated as well. DOHC VVT, and it's using the M54 engine. Producing 170 kilowatts of power and 300 Nm of torque, it's got 116.4 kilowatts a tonne, accelerating the car to 0 to 100 in 7 seconds. Still not the fastest out the gate, but the aftermarket support for this is unbelievable. The amount of carbon intakes and cold air intakes and different manifolds that you can find for cheap just everywhere in Australia is ridiculous. Anywhere you are, the 3 Series E46 is just one of the most well-known and well-supported cars. Its community is incredible, so large you could look for any body kit and you could pick up an M Sport body kit for maybe just over $1,000. With this modification, I'd say it makes one of the better cars over the E90. As much as it's not nearly as luxurious and as creature comfort, it doesn't have nearly the amount of creature comfort, it's still got great stock looks and OEM power. The E46 is an enjoyable, fun car for first drivers. It does lack those refinements that will come in many of the other cars that I'll talk about, but definitely don't disregard it. If you want something fun, raw, and a real driver's experience, pick up the E46. You'll have a blast. Now, this car that I'm going to talk about next is still a little bit unknown to me. When I was just starting to get into the car culture, I often looked at the E46 and hailed it as the Allfather. The E36, sure, but I never looked at it because I thought I could never afford it with how high the price is getting. But this car, the E82 BMW 125i, is the most underrated BMW I've ever seen, and in fact never heard of. No one talks about them. The 3 litre naturally aspirated inline-6 that comes in the E90 is used in this car as well. heavily deriving parts from the earlier E46 years and the future E90 years, there's easy modifications to be made interior-wise and exterior-wise. As much as body kits and such to come for the bumpers and the rear bumpers and your tail wing and all that such, it's not as easy because this community isn't really that big, but you can definitely find a good amount of modifications. But when it comes to engine modifications, this thing is a pocket rocket. 160 kilowatts of power, 260 newton meters of torque, power to weight ratio of 114 kilowatts a ton, 0 to 100 in 6.4 seconds stock. Same engine, but in a lighter chassis, can do so much more. With the modifications from carbon intakes to aluminium manifolds and all that such, fuel injectors, you could make a pocket rocket. As much as it wouldn't necessarily be legal, this budget E46 E90 is so much more fun to be getting into if you're just looking for speed. It's easy to find in a manual and easy to make power. What more could you want? If you just look for that, get the 125i. Now, this car is actually one of the cars I'm considering for buying for myself when I get onto my Ps. Against the next car on the list, which I'll talk about later obviously, the E92 BMW 330d. It's a 3-litre turbo intercooled inline 6, dual overhead cams, all that nice stuff, and it produces 180 kilowatts of power and 520 newton meters of torque. A power to weight ratio of 120 kilowatts a ton, it accelerates from 0 to 100 in 6.2 seconds. Way closer to 6 seconds than the other one, but let's disregard that. Sadly, it only redlines at around 4,800 RPM, being a diesel engine, understandably. It's much less growl when you're really trying to put the power down, but that doesn't necessarily mean it won't put it down. When you floor it on this thing, it activates. It just switches. Regardless of it not being an M car, it's still, for a diesel, one of the best drivers I think I've ever seen. And yes, I've had some personal experience with people who have owned these, and they are some pretty nice cars. It's my personal favorite 3 Series when it comes to any of the models, as it just has that look to it. It's not as flowy and curvy as the E90, but definitely not as sharp as the F Series to come after. It's a good blend between the two, and it comes only in a coupe, which is great, what I'm looking for. It performs the best clearly, and it just has that look to it that can be modified by aftermarket support. Great, but definitely not at the level of the E46, but not as small as the 1 Series, 125i. The E82 definitely lacks in that, but the E92 sits somewhere in the middle, around the same as the E90. With a good set of wheels and bagging this car, it already looks wonderful. And then imagine putting like carbon lip spoilers and diffusers on the back and the front. It's just mean. This car is one of my personal favorite, and I would say if you're looking for a good, cheap diesel, definitely not cheap actually, what am I saying? It's probably on the more expensive side in the list, but a good quality, good value for money diesel, pick up one of these. The E60 5 Series, specifically the BMW 530i. I love this car. It's what I'm looking for to get on my Ps, ideally. As much as I said the 330d is competing, this just is such a better value for money. I saw one of these for $9,000 on car sales with 100,000 kilometers, and do you know what that gets you? It gets you a 3-litre naturally aspirated inline 6 DOHC VVT and the M54 engine. Obviously, for the earlier years, it does switch to the N series engine, I'm pretty sure, in later years, but we're talking about the M54 version. With 170 kilowatts of power and 300 newton meters of torque, it has a power to weight ratio of 116.5 kilowatts a ton, accelerating it from 0 to 100 in exactly 7 to 7.1 seconds, I think. Redlining at 7,000 RPM, it's a canyon cruiser to highway monster performance vehicle. The aftermarket support for this engine is unbelievable. It was used in a lot of their models, obviously, which is why it's so big. If I wanted to make power, I saw a video where a dude had spent around $1,700 and took it from 170 kilowatts of power to 250 kilowatts of power. I don't know if that's that good, as I'm not that in tune with price for modification for that value, but it sounds pretty good to me at least. All I can say is, with an majority of aluminium body, with its even weight distribution and M54 engine, it comes with some decent aftermarket support as well, body-wise. You can get some nice skirts, some diffuser body kits, grills, like lip spoilers, all of it. It comes with everything. And that future iDrive system, it was ahead of its time. If you want the perfect car that feels like a 2015 back from 2004, this is the car to go for. It's still crazy to think that this car was regarded as one of the, heavy quotes, ugliest cars of its time. By most luxury reviewers today would still say the same, but everybody in the community knows some people are still stubborn, but a majority of people would agree. Its looks were unmatched. It was ahead of its time, and its technology was revolutionary. Its value for money is the best on this whole list, and if you actually find one for cheap, let me know.